So, you've been drawing for years on your iPad or tablet using Procreate or Ibis Paint, and you see, oh, Clip Studio is having a sale. All the pros use Clip Studio, and everyone says it's so much better. Now's my chance to get it. Let's get a drawing tablet while we're at it. Okay, let's open it up and... Huh? Why is all this stuff on my screen? Asset store? What's that? Where are all the brushes? Why are there so many sections? What's going on? If this is you, you've come to the right place. Clip Studio looks very intimidating for anyone not used to it. I mostly use Procreate, which has an extremely minimal interface. Ibis Paint also has a very minimal interface. So opening Clip Studio left me looking very confused. Everything is just opened up and it's hard to find any of the functions that you'd normally use. So I'm making this tutorial to help anyone who wants to get into Clip Studio be able to understand it better and be able to apply their workflow. It's mostly from the perspective of a beginner or someone who, like I said, is used to using Procreate or Ibis Paint or a program like that. I will be mostly focusing on my own workflow and what I mostly use. My workflow is pretty basic and I don't really use any fancy commands or anything like that. Anything I use are pretty standard functions. Mostly because I don't really know how to use some of the other more complex stuff even in Procreate. I'll try my best to also show some of the more popular functions I've seen a lot of people use, even if I don't use them myself. So again, this is the basic bare bones tutorial of how to use this program. This is a list of things that I will be going over in this tutorial. The headings match with the chapter name so you can jump around if needed. Starting off with making the canvas. This step is pretty much the same across all art programs. So you just go to File, press New, and this window will pop up, prompting you to choose how you want your canvas to look. So here you can change the dimensions of the canvas. I have it set to the width being 8 inches and the height being 10 inches. So if you're making something to be viewed online, you might want to use pixels. But if you're planning to make a print of some kind, you might want to use inches or centimeters. And remember to check the acceptable dimensions of wherever your piece will show up before starting your artwork. But if you need to change it, we will go over how to edit the canvas after the fact. The resolution or DPI also needs to be correct. For pixel art, for example, I think generally a lower DPI is used, but if anything is to be printed, the standard DPI is 300 to 350. I typically use 350. So here they have a bunch of preset numbers that you can use, or you can just type it in yourself. Here where it says unit is where you can change between centimeters, millimeters, inches, pixels, and I'm not sure what PT stands for. In basic expression color, you can choose whether it will be color, gray, or monotone. Here you can change the color of the background layer or even remove it. So here it's checked right now, so the paper color or background color is white. If you uncheck it, then it'll be transparent. And if you click the bar, you can change the color of the background. But I usually just use it as white. These other templates up here are for different formats, like comics, webtoons, and animations. So this is illustration, webtoon, comic, more comic settings, and animation, which you can also do in Clip Studio. I don't use those though, so I don't really know how they work. This drop down where it says preset is some preset canvas dimensions. So if you have one you know you'll use, you can select it. So here they have square, postcard, sticker size, and all that. If you press custom, you can just create whichever one you want. Here is where you will name it, or you don't have to if you don't want to. You can always rename it later. And illustration is if you're going to do animation. And if you want to record the time lapse, you press it here. But you can also start recording the time lapse later on after you made the canvas, which I'll go over too. If you record the time lapse, it'll make the file size bigger than if it wasn't recorded. So Clip Studio does not automatically record the time lapse like Procreate and IBIS Paint does, so you have to remember to check it off. So you press OK and your canvas will come up. So now on to Workspace. Most of these windows in the workspace can be dragged out, closed, extended, and all that. So if you want to open one up, you press these arrows pointing towards the center and it'll open up. And to minimize it, you would do the same thing, but pressing the arrows that go the other way. You can do the same thing with the toolbar and for materials, even the navigation over here. So you can have it completely minimal like this, or you can have everything pretty much showing more like this. It all depends on what's more comfortable for you. If you want to take a widget out, you just hold and drag it out like this. And to put it back, you hold and drag it back here. And this red bar will appear and it'll tell you where what you're dragging will be placed. I'm not completely sure as to what each and every single window does because there's many different windows. But you can take a look at them and see what fits into your workflow. You can also download workspaces from the asset store if you want. Onto brushes. So Clip Studio comes with a bunch of brushes already installed, but if you want more, you can go to the asset store and look through and download brushes and materials. When you download brushes, you can go in the brushes and press the add subtool button, or you can press this button right here, which does the same thing. And everything you download will show up in this menu and you can just select what to add. If you press this button here, it'll duplicate whatever tool that you're on or whatever brush that you're on. So maybe if you have a brush that you really like but you want to just edit things so you can have two versions of it, you can do it like this. And if you want to edit a brush, this tool property that's right here is based off the brush that you select here, and it has just the basic settings for it. But if you want to go to more detailed settings, you can press this wrench right here and it has all the detailed settings for the brush. I do plan on making another tutorial that will go over brushes in detail. So if you want to make brushes of your own, maybe you can do that if you want. But for now, that's not the focus. So here you can change the brush size, the brush opacity, the stabilization, and all that. And to delete a brush, you just press the delete selected subtool button. If you want to rearrange the brushes, you just press and hold and you can move it up and down. Again, the red bar will tell you where it will go. You can move them between sections like this, even between the larger categories. If you want to make like another one of these sections like this, like almost like making a new pack or just like a brush pack, then you can select the brush and put it so the red bar is on the side like this, and it'll make a whole other thing, and you can add tools and basically put all your materials in the same place. So this top section has the pens and markers. I have a lot of brushes in here that are not organized, but this is for pencils and pastels. The paint type of brushes, so watercolor, thick paint, India ink. Here are the air brushes. These are the decorative brushes, so like sparkles, blood, glitter, and all that. And they have different sections, so more organics, clothes, and all that. And again, you can always drag these into a main thing, despite which major category they're part of, and basically create your own make your own folder for all the brushes that you use. Here's the erasers. They have a bunch of different kinds of erasers. These are the blending tools. And this is Liquify, which I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with further on. So on to layers. This is the layers panel. So I'm going to go over all the different layers brushes. This button right here is where you would add a new layer. So just like a regular raster layer, as they would say. This is to add a vector layer. I've never used a vector layer before, but yeah, I'm not really sure what the difference is. I never used it, like I said. This is to add a layer folder, and then you could drag other layers into the folder, drag them out of the folder, and all that. You can even put a folder within a folder. So you can have that and then another folder if you needed. This will transfer to a lower layer. So if you go like this, what you just put will appear on the layer underneath. So whatever you had put on this layer will now be on the layer underneath. So see, this bottom layer has it, but the top layer no longer has it. This button is to merge with layer before, so it'll combine the two layers into one. This is to create a layer mask. This will apply the mask layer if it's selected, and this is to delete a layer. So moving on, this is the clipping mask, so it'll clip to layer below. So let's say you have a circle like this, and then you make a new layer, and then you set it to clipping. So this reddish pinkish bar will appear, and it shows that it's clipping to this mask. When you try to color, it won't appear where the layer below is painted on. It'll only appear where the layer below has like basically color on it. So even if you make another one, these carry on to this first layer. So it's not like this one only clips to this one. No, it'll be both of these are clipped to this. So if we go to layer 3 and we choose like green, for example, it'll also only appear on that bottom layer's color. So then we have a reference layer. So if you set as a reference, other functions that you use will reference to this layer. So let's say you have a circle like this, right? So you have a circle and you only want to fill the area here, but not the whole outside. You set this as a reference layer, and then even if you go to another layer and use the fill tool, making sure it's selected as refers to other layers, and use the fill tool, it'll only fill in that area. So this is good if you're trying to quickly fill in base colors to some line art that you have. You can set the line art layer to a reference layer and quickly fill in different sections without going outside of the lines. This is set as draft layer. I'm not quite sure what this does, but if you lock the layer, you can't draw on that layer at all. It'll just show this crossed out symbol. And then you can, the only way to unlock it is to press the unlock button. And then alpha lock, or it's not called alpha lock, it's called lock transparent pixels, but it's this version of alpha lock. So if it's selected, you can only color where the layer has already been colored on. So it's not a clipping mask, it's just if the place has previously been colored, then that's the only place where you can continue coloring on this layer. So if we take it off and like draw something here, set it back to lock transparent pixels, now we cannot draw outside, we can only draw where we had colored. And here you can change the color of the layer. So if you make like some kind of system where like red is for line art, orange is for base colors, or you can quickly remember it and maybe ease your workflow, or you can just leave it blank and just memorize your palettes, stuff like that. Not your palettes, your layers. Here you can change the blend mode of the layer. It's very similar to other art programs use. Multiply, screen, color dodge, add, all the standard. And here is how you change the opacity of the layers. Okay, so back to clipping masks for a little bit. I know a lot of people will block, let's say they have a character that they're drawing. I know a lot of people, they'll go in and they'll like block in the whole character in one solid color and then use that as use that for clipping masks to then put in the correct colors without going outside the lines. So I'm the kind of person who has to have a layer for every section, which then has their own clipping masks. So I never knew how to figure out how to use this method while also being comfortable with the amount of layers that I like to use. I think I learned how to do that. So the way to do that is clipping folders. So I found out that you can actually clip folders to a layer. So we can clip this whole folder in there, and then we can have layers in the folder. And then you can like color it in and then have another layer which is clipped to this layer that's still within the folder, and then you only color there. So then you can just keep adding more clipped folders, so then you can still have a whole bunch of layers for each part of your drawing process, but then still remain pretty neat and have a more streamlined base color process. So I thought that was pretty cool. Another thing is I couldn't figure out how to clear the layer. I thought you had to just like delete the layer, but you can use a keyboard shortcut delete and it'll clear the layer. Or you can press this, I guess, popped bubble button, which is next to the undo and redo buttons, and it'll clear the layer for you. The last thing is to add a photo as a layer. You will go to File, Import, and then you can import an image. So here I've imported the image and I can like make it bigger and smaller. It's added as a layer. I think technically it's added as a material layer. If you right click the layer, you can select rasterize and it'll just become a normal layer like this. Okay, so on to reference windows and navigations, and also about the canvas again. So one of my most used features on Procreate is the reference features. I like having a collection of references right there on my screen, and I couldn't figure out how to do it here on Clip Studio, but I learned how to do it. So you're going to want to use the sub view window. So you go to window and you select here under navigator, you select sub view. You select sub view and this window will pop up. So if you press this folder button right here, you can import reference pictures of your choosing. So I've imported this, and here you can move around. And with this bar, you can zoom in and zoom out, rotate, and this will just put it to the center. And you can even flip horizontally or vertically. And then if you press this, you can open it on the canvas as well. But yeah, you can import more than one image. And then you can click between the images like this, and if you press this, then you can select the colors from the reference, and if you deselect, you can just move it around. One thing I didn't mention is if you use this button, open image on canvas, it'll open it as a new canvas. So see how up here there's two tabs? That's what it does. But let's go back here. I like the fact that you can have multiple references, which I believe that Procreate is pretty lacking in. So over here is the navigator. You can move around the little navigation view, this red box, and it'll move on the canvas. Here we'll zoom in and zoom out. Here rotates, and this will go back to 100% zoom, and this will go to 0% or 0 degrees rotation. And then you can also flip horizontal and vertically. So that's pretty good for when you're trying to check your work and make sure everything's proportionate and stuff like that. You can easily just flip the canvas. So earlier I had mentioned how you can change the properties of your canvas if it's already been made. You go to edit, if you change image resolution, here you can change the DPI, the units, you can change the width and the height and the scale. And then if you change the canvas size, you can do it. This is another way to do it. Canvas properties. Yeah, you can change. This is just another way to do it. And here you can also change the paper color. But yeah, that's how you would fix your canvas if you need to, if you've already made it and like started working. So that's there. So the next section is selection. There's multiple ways to make a selection. So you can use this tool here, this little dotted line shape, and this is your many different selection tools. So the rectangle, you can go like this and it'll select the rectangle. And then this little menu of different options will come up. So here is to deselect. So if you press this, no more selection. Or you can press Control D, I believe, on your keyboard. This will crop it, so the canvas will crop to that size. You can just undo if you press that by accident. This will invert it, so okay. So here, when it's selected, if you color, it'll only color in the selected area. If you invert it, you can no longer color in here. You can color everywhere else than what you had selected. So this will expand the selected area, so you can choose how. You can choose if it's like a corner or more of a rounded corner. Let's say we'll increase by 9 pixels. It'll go like that. So it increased a little bit. And here you can shrink it, same idea. We'll just hit okay. This will clear the layer, but only what's in the selection area. This will delete what's outside of the selection area. Here you can cut if you have something colored in here and you select the cut and paste, it'll delete it from this layer and add it onto another layer, a new layer that it has created. This one will copy and paste it, so it will remain on the original layer, but also be on a whole new layer as well. This will allow you to move the selection a little bit, so you can shrink it. Oh, let me hide that. Okay, let me hide that. Go back here, you can shrink it, enlargen it, or you could rotate it. Like so, then you hit OK, and it'll set. This button is the fill bucket tool, so wherever you selected, it'll fill. And then if you press new tone, wherever it's selected, you can apply a halftone settings. And there's different adjustments you can make to that. So I haven't really played around with the halftone settings much, so I'm not too familiar with that. So back to selection, you can choose a circle or ellipse. You can use a lasso so you can be precise. Or you could do polyline, so you can click and select like this. This is a selection pen. So with the pen, you can color where you want the selection to be. Like this. And it'll select it. So down here are a few selection functions. So this is on add selection. So that means if you have something selected and then you color somewhere else, they will both be selected. The remove from selection means if wherever you paint, it'll remove that selection from what's selected, like this. This means it'll only select what's overlapped. And then this one, you're only allowed to have one selection at a time. So if you color somewhere else, it'll go there. And erase selection, pretty straightforward. Wherever you color, it'll remove that selection. Shrink selection, I'm not really sure how it works. Yeah, I'm not completely sure. But another thing that you can do is you can go to a layer. You can color on it however you want. You can right click the layer and go to selection from layer and create a selection. Whatever you colored will now be the selection. Okay, now on to the liquify tool. So here is a liquify tool. It functions pretty much the same as on Procreate, but I would say there's a few less options. Like Procreate has the like the crystal liquify option, and that's not here. But there might be some kind of brush on the asset store that can do an effect like that. But yeah, you can just use the liquify as it says. You can change the strength, the brush size, and all that. On to the symmetry tools, the symmetry and ruler. So here's a linear ruler. If you make a line, it'll make a line. And then if you take your brush and you color over it, it'll stay on that line. You can do the same thing with a curve. Like that. Double tap to finalize it, and then if you take the brush, it'll stay on the curve. If you go like away from the line, it won't do it anymore. You have to be on it for it to stick to the ruler. If you use the guide, you can make it keeps the line straight. So then if you color on it, it'll just stay on the lines. And then you have the symmetry ruler. If you draw a line, whatever you color. Let me delete these. When you color, it'll appear on both sides. So I know a lot of people use the symmetry tool. Okay, so color effects. So there's multiple ways to apply them. If you go to edit, tonal correction, you can change the brightness and the contrast. If you go to, we have the hue, saturation, and luminosity or brightness. So the hue will change, the saturation will change, the brightness will change, and color balance, gradient map, tone curve. You can access all of those here. You can even set the whole layer to a correction layer if you need to. And then if you go to filter, you can apply some other effects. So here's where the Gaussian blur would be. And other types of blurs, there's not this many options in Procreate, so I'm not sure what all of them do, but you can mess around with it if you need to. Corrections, here you can distort the image. You could put effect filters on top. Render, you can add noise to it. I think if you press OK, then you can like change the effects and stuff. So it's basically like Procreate where there's like a noise filter. sharpen, you can do that. Here is the gradient tool. So you can change the type of gradient, adjust the settings here, and click and drag to apply the gradient. So you can mess around with that. You can even create or add in your own gradients. Here is where you can add shapes. So with the straight line, it'll make a straight line. You can change the size too. So it can be like a thicker line or thinner. And then here you could make a curve if you want to. A polyline, so something like this. And they're just a bunch of options. And the lasso fill, if you select, it'll automatically fill it in for you. And here's just some other effects that you can use. And these will make their own layer. Here's how you can add speech and text bubbles and other effects that are typically used in comics or webtoons and stuff like that. And then here is where you can add text. You just press, it lets you add the text. Here you can edit the font, the spacing, the color, all that. And then you just press OK, and it'll make its own text layer. So let's say I add some text. See, it'll make the own text layer. And then if you want it to be flat and like editable, then you would just rasterize the layer. Like I said before, there is a way to start recording your process after you've already made the canvas. So you go to File, Time Lapse, and press Record Time Lapse. And then when you're ready to export it, this will become an option and you can press Export Time Lapse. And if at any time you want to stop recording, you just come here and this will be checked off if you are recording. So if you want to stop, you would press it again and it would stop recording. For pen pressure settings, you would come down here, pen pressure settings, and you could show the pen pressure tab and adjust it to your liking. And then here, preferences, you could do all these things to change like the appearance. So if you don't want a cursor to show when you're using your brush, you can set these to none. Shortcut settings, you can apply shortcuts that you need or want and all that. So the last thing I'm going to go over is saving. So if you want to save as just like a regular Clip Studio file, you would just press the save button here and then just save it to wherever location you want. Or if you go to file, you can go to save as. If you want to save it as a different type of file, like a PNG or a JPEG, you can do that. Or you can save a duplicate, so you will keep the clip file but also have a second file that may be a different format. So let's say you want to save something as an image, but you still want to keep the clip file as a backup. You can save a duplicate as the PNG. That's basically all I have for this tutorial today. It wasn't a complete tutorial of every single thing in Clip Studio, but I went over the basics and some of the things that I think are the most used in Clip Studio, especially if you're coming from a different drawing app like Procreate or Ibis Paint. I know there's a lot of other artists that use a lot of fancy settings like auto actions and things like that, but I wanted to keep this tutorial simple and keep functions that everyone would basically be able to do. Everyone's computer should be able to handle doing these basic functions, and you should be able to create great artworks and hopefully be able to match your workflow, because I know I've been struggling with being able to transition from drawing on the iPad to drawing on the tablet. So hopefully this will help ease you into it a little bit, and then you could maybe complicate the workflow a little bit more if you so desire. Or if you just want to keep the same workflow but just change settings or change programs, that's what this is basically for. I hope this tutorial was helpful to you. I hope you can use it well and that it holds up. If you're interested in seeing more of my works, it would be greatly appreciated if you could like and subscribe and comment down below and let me know if this tutorial helped you or not. You can also follow my Instagram and TikTok. And if you're interested in any commissions, I do leave the link to my commission sheet down below. So I hope wherever you are, you're having a great day or night, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!